Sign these 6 rules or you're banned from my wedding. My brother demanded I pay for his wedding and erase his debts. I went to Phuket instead, but left a gift box that blows up his reception and reveals his $131,000 fraud. Now the bride canceled the wedding and he is ruined. Hey, welcome back to Vance Rock Stories. Family is supposed to be the one place where you never have to earn your place. But what happens when the people you love start treating your loyalty like something they can invoice? Before we get into today's story, let me know in the comments, what's the most unreasonable thing a family member has ever expected from you? And if you enjoy real-life family drama stories, don't forget to subscribe. My name is Olivia Carter. I'm 34 years old, and 2 weeks before my brother's wedding, I received an email that completely changed the way I looked at my family. It was an ordinary Tuesday. I was finishing up work, answering a few last emails before shutting down my laptop, when a new notification appeared. From Marcus Carter. The subject line read, "Wedding Details." I smiled without even thinking. Finally. Marcus and I had never been especially close as adults, but I figured this was the official invitation. Maybe the hotel information, maybe the ceremony schedule. Something normal. Instead, there was only a PDF attachment. Its title read, "6 Rules You Must Follow If You Want to Remain Part of My Wedding Day." I actually laughed. Out loud. Marcus had always been dramatic. I figured he was trying way too hard to be funny. I grabbed my phone and texted one of my coworkers, "Please tell me my brother didn't just send me a contract instead of a wedding invitation." She answered almost immediately. Only Marcus would do something that ridiculous, followed by 3 laughing emojis. I smiled. Then I opened the file. The smile disappeared pretty quickly. It wasn't written like a joke. It looked official. Bold headings, neatly organized paragraphs, bullet points. Somebody had clearly spent hours putting this together. I kept scrolling, still expecting a punchline somewhere. Instead, the final sentence on the first page caught my attention. "If you truly care about this family, you will agree to these conditions without argument." I read it twice. There was no wink, no sarcastic comment, nothing that suggested he was kidding. It sounded exactly like Marcus whenever he wanted something. That's when I noticed something else. Mom and Dad had both been copied on the email. Before I had time to process that, my phone rang. "Mom." I answered. "Did you see Marcus's email?" she asked. "I did." "So?" She hesitated. "Please don't make this harder than it needs to be." I frowned. "Wait, you've already read it?" "Yes." "And?" "He's under a lot of stress." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Mom, he didn't send an invitation. He sent me a list of conditions." "It's his wedding, Olivia." "I know it's his wedding. So maybe just try to be understanding." I leaned back in my chair. "Are you saying this is normal?" "I'm saying families sometimes make sacrifices for each other." I let out a quiet laugh. "For Marcus." She didn't answer. Instead, she softly said, "Please don't start a fight this close to the wedding." Then the line went dead. I sat there staring at my phone. I wasn't angry. Not yet. Mostly confused. Because somehow, everyone else seemed to be acting like I was the unreasonable one. About half an hour later, Dad texted. "Sometimes keeping the peace matters more than being right." That was it. No, "How are you?" No, "Are you okay?" No, "Your brother went too far." Just another reminder that keeping Marcus happy seemed to matter more than how any of this affected me. I looked back at the PDF. Maybe I'd misunderstood something. Maybe the first page only sounded harsh because I was reading it the wrong way, so I started over. Slowly, carefully. The first heading read, "Rule 1. I finished reading it once. Then I read it again, hoping I'd missed a word somewhere. I hadn't. I scrolled down. Rule 2. Then I noticed another heading waiting underneath. Rule 3. I stopped scrolling. There were still 3 more rules below them. And somehow, I already knew none of them were going to make this any easier. Rule 1. Marcus wanted me to transfer $35,000 into an account he'd listed at the bottom of the page. There was even a deadline. 4 days. Underneath it, he'd written, "This contribution reflects your support for our future as a family." Contribution? I stared at the screen. He wasn't asking. He'd already decided the money belonged to him. I kept scrolling. Rule 2. I was expected to sign paperwork confirming that the money I'd loaned him years ago for his fitness studio was officially a gift. No repayment. No future claims. Just my signature saying the debt no longer existed. I leaned back in my chair and laughed under my breath. Not because it was funny anymore. Because I honestly didn't know what else to do. That studio had barely lasted a year before closing. Marcus had promised he'd make things right dozens of times. Apparently, this was his version of making things right. Erase the debt. Rule 3 wasn't any better. He wanted Grandma's emerald necklace, the one she'd left to me before she passed away. His explanation was only one sentence. Lauren should wear it because she'll be carrying on the Carter family legacy. I actually whispered, "Wow." Not angry, just impressed by the confidence. Grandma hadn't left it to the Carter family. She'd left it to me. I kept reading. Rule 4 assigned my seat at the reception. Not with my parents. Not with the immediate family. I'd be seated near the back of the ballroom with distant relatives I hadn't seen in years. The reason? To avoid unnecessary tension during the evening. Unnecessary tension. I wasn't the one sending 6 rules to wedding guests. Rule 5 told me I had to hand my phone to Marcus's best man before the ceremony started. No explanation. Just another condition. Then I reached the last page. Rule 6. Marcus wanted me to give a short toast during the reception. At first, I thought, finally, something normal. Then I kept reading. The speech had already been written, word for word. It included a line saying I'd been jealous of Marcus's success for years. Another paragraph thanked him for always supporting me despite my difficult personality. I couldn't even finish it in one sitting. I closed the laptop and walked into my kitchen. My coffee had gone cold. I poured it into the sink without thinking. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed again. Marcus. I almost ignored it. Instead, I answered. "Hey, Liv." He sounded relaxed, like we'd been talking about football instead of whatever that document was. "So," he said, "you got everything?" I did. "Great." That was it. No apology, no explanation, just great. "I have a question," I said. "Sure. Were you serious?" He laughed. "Of course I'm serious." "You actually expect me to do all of this?" "It's one day. It's $35,000. It's family." He said it so casually, like those two things meant exactly the same. I stayed quiet. Marcus filled the silence. "Look, Lauren's family is used to doing things a certain way. I need everything to go smoothly." "What does Grandma's necklace have to do with that?" "It'll look better on Lauren. It belongs to me. It belongs to the family." "No," I said calmly. "Grandma left it to me." He sighed like I was the difficult one. "Olivia, why do you always focus on the wrong thing?" I almost laughed. "The wrong thing?" "Yeah. This whole wedding is about bringing people together. And you think demanding money is the best way to do that?" "I think everyone should contribute." "I already have." "What do you mean?" I looked out the kitchen window for a second. "You've forgotten." Marcus didn't answer. Instead, he changed the subject. "Oh, one more thing." His voice became strangely cheerful. "I've already told everyone your wedding gift is going to be opened during the reception." I frowned. "What?" "I figured it'll be a fun moment." I never agreed to that. You don't have to. It'll be great. Marcus, I know you'll do the right thing. Then he hung up. I stood there with my phone still in my hand. He wasn't asking anymore. He was making plans using things that belonged to me, as if I'd already said yes. That evening, I opened my laptop again, not to look for a dress, not to RSVP, not even to answer Marcus's email. Instead, I opened a travel website and searched for flights to Phuket, Thailand. I left the travel website open on my laptop for a long time, not because I was ready to book anything, just because looking at flights to Phuket somehow felt more peaceful than looking at another message from Marcus. My phone buzzed twice, then 3 more times. The Carter family group chat. I opened it. Marcus had sent a photo from a cake tasting with Lauren. Everything's coming together. A few relatives replied with heart emojis. My aunt commented, "Can't wait to celebrate." Then Mom added, "We're so proud of you." Nothing about the email he'd sent me, nothing about the 6 demands. It was like those conversations existed in 2 completely different worlds. I closed the chat without replying. The truth was, none of this had come out of nowhere. Marcus had been getting away with things for as long as I could remember. When we were teenagers, he totaled Dad's SUV after taking it to a college party without permission. I still remember sitting at the kitchen table while Dad rubbed his forehead. "We can't afford this repair," he said. Marcus apologized. Sort of. He blamed the weather, then his friends, then the other driver. By the end of dinner, somehow everyone agreed it had just been bad luck. A week later, Mom asked if I could help cover part of the repair bill. "You've always been better at saving money," she told me. I was 22. I emptied most of my emergency fund because I thought that's what families did. Marcus thanked me once, then he never mentioned it again. Years later, he called me with another dream, a fitness studio. He had business plans, market research, financial projections. He sounded so confident that I almost believed him. "I just need someone to believe in me," he said. I did. I loaned him almost $92,000 from my investment savings. We signed a simple agreement. Nothing fancy. He promised he'd pay me back once the business became profitable. The studio lasted 11 months. When it closed, Marcus told everyone the economy had ruined him. Dad said, "He took a chance. That's admirable." Mom hugged him while he cried. A month later, she called me. "I know this isn't the best time." I already knew where the conversation was going. "Mom, he can't repay you right now." "I know. Maybe. Don't bring it up for a while." "A while?" "He already feels terrible." I looked at the repayment agreement sitting in my desk drawer. "So I'm just supposed to pretend the money never existed?" "It's only money, Olivia." I still remember those words. It's only money. Funny how nobody ever said that when the money belonged to Marcus. Back in the present, I walked over to my hallway closet and pulled out a small fireproof box. Inside were old financial papers, tax documents, and the original loan agreement. The signatures were still there. Mine, Marcus's, the repayment schedule we'd both agreed to. I set it on the dining table beside my laptop. For a moment, I thought about texting him. Not to argue, just to ask one question. "When did you decide my kindness became something you were entitled to?" I never sent it. Instead, my phone rang again. "Mom." I answered after the 3rd ring. "Have you thought about Marcus's email?" "I've read it." "I mean, have you decided?" "I haven't." She sounded relieved. "Good. Why is that good?" "Because I know you'll make the right choice." I almost smiled. "You already know what my choice should be?" "I know you love your brother." "I do." "Then don't let pride get in the way." "Pride?" "He's asking everyone to make sacrifices." I looked around my apartment. "No, Mom." Silence. "He's asking me." She sighed. "I don't want you two fighting." "I don't either. Then be the bigger person. There it was. The sentence I'd probably heard more than any other growing up. Be the bigger person. Which somehow always meant I was expected to give something up. When the call ended, I didn't feel angry anymore. Just tired. Tired of waiting for someone to notice that the rules were always different depending on which Carter child they were talking to. I picked up Marcus's PDF again. This time I wasn't reading it as an insult. I was reading it carefully, line by line. Near the bottom of one of the attached documents, a paragraph caught my attention. It wasn't written like the rest. The wording sounded strangely legal. I leaned closer to the screen and read it again. Something about that section didn't feel right. I zoomed in on the document until the text filled almost my entire screen. The paragraph that had caught my attention wasn't written in the same plain language as the rest of Marcus's demands. It sounded legal. I read it again, then a third time. The undersigned acknowledges responsibility for any remaining financial obligations associated with prior business activities. I stopped. That couldn't be right. This was supposed to be a wedding. Why was there language about future financial obligations buried inside paperwork that Marcus wanted me to sign? I copied the paragraph into a note and read it one sentence at a time. The more I looked at it, the less comfortable I felt. Maybe I was overthinking it. Or maybe Marcus was hoping I wouldn't think about it at all. There was one person I trusted enough to ask. Rachel Morgan. We'd been friends since college. She worked as a financial analyst, and unlike most people in my life, she never sugarcoated things just to keep everyone comfortable. She answered on the second ring. Hey Liv, everything okay? I need you to look at something. Her tone changed immediately. What happened? My brother sent me, honestly, I don't even know what to call it. A contract? That's exactly what it feels like. I emailed her the PDF while we stayed on the phone. A minute later, I heard her quietly scrolling. Then, huh. I knew that sound. What? I'm still reading. Another pause. Then another. Finally, she spoke. Olivia, why is there legal language inside wedding conditions? So I'm not imagining it? No. She kept scrolling. The first few pages are ridiculous. I noticed. But this section, she read part of it out loud. It isn't just forgiving an old debt. I sat a little straighter. What do you mean? It looks broader than that. How broad? I can't say for certain without legal advice, but if I'm reading this correctly, she paused. It could be interpreted as you accepting responsibility for obligations connected to his business. I felt my stomach tighten. Future obligations? Potentially. I looked back at the screen. Marcus hadn't told me any of this. All he'd said was that signing the paperwork would let everyone move forward. Rachel sighed. Please tell me you haven't signed anything. I haven't. Good. My phone buzzed again. Marcus. I ignored it. A second later, another message appeared. Need confirmation today. Then another. Lauren's family is asking questions. Then, don't embarrass me. Rachel heard my phone vibrating. That's him, isn't it? Yeah. Don't answer yet. I turned the phone face down. For the first time since receiving the email, I wasn't thinking about the wedding anymore. I was thinking about paperwork, intent, liability. The words Marcus had chosen suddenly mattered more than his attitude. Rachel broke the silence. Can I ask you something? Sure. Has Marcus ever mixed family and money before? I laughed once. You have about 3 hours? She laughed too. That small moment actually helped. For the first time in days, someone wasn't telling me to keep the peace. Someone was actually listening. I told her about the fitness studio, the unpaid $92,000, the constant promises, the excuses. She never interrupted. When I finished, she simply said, Olivia, you've spent years assuming he was irresponsible. I know. What if he's been calculating instead? That sentence stayed with me, because I honestly didn't know the answer. Another message from Marcus lit up my screen. I need those signed before the weekend. A minute later, he sent one more. Don't make me involve Mom and Dad again. I looked at Rachel's name on my phone. So, what do I do? Her answer came without hesitation. Don't sign another thing. She took a breath. And I think we need to sit down with an attorney as soon as possible. Rachel managed to get me an appointment the very next morning. It wasn't one of those dramatic TV moments where a lawyer takes one look at a document and immediately solves everything. Most of the meeting was surprisingly ordinary. He introduced himself, asked me to walk him through the timeline, and took notes while I explained everything from the email to Marcus's phone calls. Every so often, he'd stop me. When exactly did he send this? Have you signed anything? Did he explain why these documents were included with the wedding conditions? Every answer I gave seemed to create another question. Rachel sat beside me, quietly organizing the paperwork I'd brought. The attorney read through the packet without saying much. He circled a few paragraphs, highlighted a couple of names. Then he stopped on the legal attachment. I don't like this language, he said. I felt my shoulders tense. For what reason? It's unusually broad. He tapped the page with his pen. If this had only released an old personal loan, I'd expect much simpler wording. So what does this do? He shook his head. I don't want to guess. That wasn't the answer I wanted, but somehow it made me trust him more. He wasn't trying to scare me. He was being careful. He asked for permission to look into a few business filings connected to Marcus's former fitness company. I signed the authorization. Then we waited while his assistant copied everything I'd brought. The silence gave my mind too much room to wander. Little memories kept surfacing. Things I'd never questioned before. A few years earlier, Marcus had called me while I was at work. Hey, I just emailed something. What is it? Nothing important. The bank needs one more signature before they'll finish processing some paperwork. What paperwork? Business stuff. Shouldn't I read it first? You can if you want, he'd laughed. But it's basically just confirming I'm your brother. At the time, I'd trusted him. I signed electronically between meetings. Another memory followed. Marcus once asked me to send him a copy of my driver's license because, according to him, the accountant mixed up some family records. I remembered thinking it sounded strange. Then I remembered sending it anyway. Sitting in that office, those small moments suddenly didn't feel so small anymore. The attorney looked up. Ms. Carter? Sorry. You mentioned your brother occasionally asked you to sign documents in the past. Yeah. Do you still have copies? I honestly don't know. If you find anything, don't delete emails or messages. Keep everything. Rachel nodded before I could answer. We'll go through her old files. The attorney thanked her. Then he opened another document on his computer. His expression changed slightly. Not shock. More like curiosity. I waited. What is it? I've found a few business records connected to the company. Okay. They include personal information. My brother's? He looked at me. No. He turned the monitor just enough for us to see. My full legal name. My mailing address. Part of my social security number. Information that had no obvious reason to be attached to Marcus's business paperwork. I stared at the screen. I don't remember giving permission for any of this. I'm not saying anything improper happened, he replied carefully. Not yet. But I also can't explain why your information appears in multiple filings. Rachel slowly folded her arms. Can you get the complete records? I've already requested them. How long? A day or two. The room suddenly felt much quieter. On the drive home, Rachel kept trying to lighten the mood by talking about completely unrelated things. A new coffee shop, a movie she'd watched, anything except legal documents. I appreciated the effort. But my mind kept replaying those old conversations with Marcus. Every rushed signature, every favor, every time he'd said, "Just trust me." By the time I got home, my inbox contained 3 more emails from him. None of them asked how I was. Every one of them asked whether I'd signed the paperwork. About an hour later, my phone rang. It was the attorney. "I've received a response from one of the record requests," he said. "I think you should come back to the office." "Did you find something?" There was a brief pause. "I'd rather show you in person." Rachel was already waiting outside the attorney's office when I pulled into the parking lot. She gave me a small wave, but neither of us smiled. We both knew this meeting wasn't going to be routine. The attorney closed the office door behind us and placed a thick folder on the conference table. "I've reviewed the additional records," he said. "There are several documents I think you need to see." He slid the first one across the table. It was a business credit application connected to Marcus's old fitness company. At first glance, nothing stood out. Then I saw my name. Not listed as an emergency contact, not as a family reference, as someone connected to the financial application. I frowned. "I've never seen this before." He nodded. "I believe you." He handed me another document, then another. Different dates, different lenders, the same pattern. My personal information kept appearing. Address, date of birth, contact details. Some documents even included a signature that looked surprisingly close to mine. Close enough that, if I hadn't known better, I might have believed I'd signed them myself. Rachel leaned closer. "That's not your signature, is it?" I shook my head. "No. But someone clearly wanted it to look like yours." The room went quiet. The attorney folded his hands. "At this point, I can't determine who completed these applications. But I can say there are enough inconsistencies to justify a formal investigation." I stared at the papers spread across the table. For years, I'd assumed Marcus was careless, disorganized, bad with money. Now another possibility was sitting right in front of me. What if none of it had been accidental? The attorney opened one final file. "This is the current estimated exposure connected to the accounts we located." He turned the page toward me. "Approximately $131,000. I didn't say anything. I just kept looking at the number. $131,000. Rachel quietly asked, "Does Olivia owe this?" "Not necessarily," the attorney answered. "That's exactly why we need to act quickly." He explained that the accounts appeared to be connected to business financing, but the documentation raised serious questions about how they had been obtained. Some of the money had gone where you'd expect: vendor payments, business expenses, but not all of it. He pointed to another summary: luxury vehicle payments, personal travel, credit card balances, large purchases that had nothing to do with running a struggling fitness studio. I looked at him. "So, the business wasn't the only thing being financed." He slowly shook his head. "Based on what we've found so far? No." Everything Marcus had told the family suddenly sounded different. Every speech about bad luck, every story about investors pulling out, every promise that he'd pay me back once things stabilized. Rachel reached over and gently touched my arm. "You okay?" I surprised myself with the answer. "Actually," I took a slow breath. "I think I finally am." She looked confused. "I spent years trying to figure out what I did wrong." I looked down at the stack of documents. But this was never about me. The anger I'd expected never really arrived, not the kind where you yell or throw things. It was quieter than that, colder. Like someone had finally switched on a light in a room I'd been walking through in the dark. Marcus wasn't just my irresponsible older brother anymore. He was someone who had been willing to use my trust whenever it benefited him. The attorney gathered the papers into a neat stack. "I recommend freezing your credit immediately. We should also preserve every email, text message, and document related to your brother. I nodded. I'll do it today. Rachel looked at the wedding packet that was still sitting on top of the folder. Can we go through those 6 rules again? I opened the PDF. For the first time, I wasn't reading them as ridiculous wedding demands. I was reading them as pieces of a much larger plan. And suddenly, every single one of them made perfect sense. I spread Marcus's wedding packet across my dining table. For days, I'd been looking at it like a list of impossible demands. Now I looked at it like evidence. The first rule, $35,000. That wasn't a wedding gift. It was cash he desperately needed. The second rule, erase the old fitness studio debt. If I signed it, I'd lose one more piece of evidence that he'd owed me money for years. The third rule, Grandma's emerald necklace. That one finally made sense too. Marcus wasn't interested in the necklace itself. He wanted Lauren's family to believe he came from money, something old, something valuable, something that made the Carter family look far more successful than we actually were. Then I reached the last 3 rules. Sit away from the immediate family. Hand over my phone. Read a speech admitting I was jealous of Marcus. A few days earlier, those demands had seemed childish. Now they felt calculated. If I was sitting in the back of the ballroom, I couldn't easily talk to Lauren's parents. Without my phone, I couldn't pull up emails or documents. And if I publicly admitted I was jealous, anything I said later would sound like revenge instead of the truth. I slowly closed the folder. It wasn't 6 random rules. It was one carefully built strategy. My phone rang. Dad. I almost let it go to voicemail. Instead, I answered. You've upset your brother. I didn't even ask how. He says you're refusing to support him. I'm refusing to sign legal documents I don't understand. Dad sighed. You're making this bigger than it needs to be. No, Dad. I'm trying to keep it from getting bigger. He ignored that. Can't you just do this one thing? I laughed quietly. How many times have you asked me that? Silence. Just this once. Just help your brother. Just be the bigger person. Every conversation sounded exactly the same. Dad lowered his voice. Families survive because people forgive each other. I've been forgiving Marcus for years. This isn't about the past. It is for me. He didn't respond. Instead, he simply said, If you don't come to the wedding, people are going to ask questions. I know. What should I tell them? I thought about that for a second. The truth. He ended the call. Less than 10 minutes later, Marcus texted me. If you keep doing this, people are going to realize you're just bitter. I didn't answer. Another message arrived. Don't blame me when everyone finds out you've always been jealous of me. That one actually made me smile, not because it was funny, because it confirmed exactly what I'd already figured out. He needed a story. If the truth came out, he wanted everyone to believe it came from an angry sister, not from evidence. I forwarded every message to my attorney, every email, every text, every attachment. Then I spent the next hour freezing my credit, changing passwords, and saving copies of anything connected to Marcus's business. It wasn't exciting work. Mostly phone calls, verification codes, long holds with customer service. But every small step made me feel a little more in control. Rachel checked in that evening. How are you holding up? Better than I expected. You sound different. I am. What changed? I looked around my apartment. For the first time in days, I wasn't trying to figure out how to fix my family. I was figuring out how to protect myself. I'm done trying to convince people I'm not the problem. Rachel smiled. That's probably the healthiest thing you've said all week. When we hung up, I reopened the travel website I'd visited a few nights earlier. The search results were still there. Flights to Phuket. I compared a few options. Round trip. Flexible dates. One way. I stared at that last option for a long moment. Then, I clicked purchase on a one-way ticket to Phuket, Thailand. The confirmation email for my flight stayed at the top of my inbox. Departure in 3 days. For once, I wasn't counting down to my brother's wedding. I was counting down to leaving. My apartment slowly turned into a maze of half-packed suitcases. Summer clothes, a few books, my laptop, the essentials. I wasn't running away. I was choosing where I wanted to be when all of this finally caught up with Marcus. My phone still rang constantly. Mom, Dad, Marcus. Sometimes all three within the same hour. I stopped answering, not because I wanted to punish them, because every conversation ended exactly the same way. They wanted me to give in. I had already made my decision, so there wasn't anything left to debate. Instead, every message went straight to my attorney. He'd asked me not to delete anything. Even the angry texts could become useful later. Marcus seemed to notice I'd stopped responding. His messages changed. At first they were demanding. I need those papers signed. Then frustrated. Why are you making this difficult? Then almost friendly. Let's just get through the wedding and deal with everything later. I didn't reply to any of them. Rachel came over one evening carrying takeout. She looked around my apartment and laughed. You actually packed. I figured I'd better start. You still sure about Phuket? I zipped up one suitcase. I've never been more sure about anything. She smiled. I was hoping you'd say that. We ate dinner on the floor because my dining table had disappeared under stacks of paperwork. Legal copies, old loan agreements, printed emails, shipping receipts. The attorney wanted everything organized. Rachel helped sort them into folders. At one point, she picked up a small maple wood box sitting near the edge of the table. It wasn't very large, just elegant enough to look like an expensive wedding gift. This is the famous gift? She asked. I nodded. She carefully set it back down. What's going inside? Only things that belong there. Over the next hour, I placed items into the box one at a time. A sealed envelope, copies of several documents, another envelope with Lauren's name written across the front. Rachel noticed I kept arranging everything in a specific order. You've thought this through. I've had to. I closed the lid for a moment, then opened it again. Something still didn't feel complete. I added one more document, then another. Finally, I placed a small velvet pouch inside before closing the lid for good. Rachel looked at me but didn't ask what was in it. She respected that some decisions belong to me. What happens after you ship it? She asked. I let my attorney handle everything else. No more phone calls? I shook my head. No more private conversations. No explaining yourself? I've spent years explaining myself. And? No one wanted an explanation. They wanted compliance. That realization didn't hurt anymore. It actually felt freeing. The following morning, I dropped the package off with insured delivery. I watched the clerk print the tracking label. Wedding gift? She asked with a smile. I smiled back. You could call it that. As I walked back to my car, my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't my family. It was my attorney. The package is documented, he said. Good. I wanted a record of everything. You made the right call. When we hung up, another notification appeared. Someone had tagged me in a social media post. It was Marcus. He'd uploaded photos from the rehearsal dinner preparations, grinning beside Lauren while relatives filled the comments with congratulations. Then I noticed his newest caption. Can't wait for everyone to see Olivia's wedding gift. She finally came through, and it's going to be the biggest surprise of the entire reception. I looked at the tracking number still saved on my phone. The package was already on its way. The first thing I noticed in Phuket wasn't the beach. It was the silence. No one expected anything from me. No one asked me to fix a problem that wasn't mine. I checked into a small hotel overlooking the water, dropped my suitcase by the bed, and stood on the balcony for a few minutes. It felt strange, not exciting, just quiet. I hadn't realized how exhausted I'd been until everything finally stopped. My phone still had service. I left it on because my attorney needed to reach me if anything urgent happened. Unfortunately, everyone else could reach me too. By lunchtime, I'd missed 7 calls from Mom, 4 from Dad, 3 from Marcus. There were voice messages too. Mom's sounded tired. "Please call us. We can still work this out." Dad's was shorter. "You're making a mistake." Marcus didn't even bother pretending to be polite. "If you're doing this to embarrass me, don't." I deleted none of them. Every message was automatically forwarded to my attorney. Then I slipped my phone back into my bag and walked toward the beach. I spent the afternoon doing something I hadn't done in years. Nothing. I bought fresh fruit from a street vendor, sat under an umbrella, watched boats move across the water. For a few hours, my brother's wedding felt like it belonged to someone else's life. That evening, my phone rang again. Unknown number. Normally, I wouldn't answer. Something told me to pick it up. "Hello?" A woman's voice spoke carefully. "Olivia?" "Yes." "This is Lauren." I sat up straighter. Marcus's fiancée had never called me directly before. "I hope I'm not bothering you." "No." She hesitated. "I wasn't sure if you'd answer." Neither was I. For a few seconds, neither of us said anything. Finally, she asked, "Are you really not coming?" "No." "I figured." She sounded disappointed. Not angry, just confused. "I've been asking Marcus a few questions today." "What kind of questions?" "About the wedding budget." I stayed quiet. "And about the fitness studio." Still quiet. "He keeps changing the story." I looked out toward the ocean. The waves rolled in without caring about any of this. Lauren spoke again. "He told me your family had already settled everything." I almost laughed. "Did he?" "Then he said you were upset because he wouldn't let you control the wedding." Another pause. I don't know what to believe anymore. For a moment, I wanted to explain everything. The loan, the documents, the credit applications. Years of being expected to clean up Marcus's mistakes. Instead, I remembered exactly what my attorney had advised. Don't argue, don't speculate, let the evidence speak. So I answered with the only thing I felt comfortable saying. "When the gift arrives?" She waited. "Read everything inside the envelope." "That's it? Everything you need is in there." She didn't ask another question. She simply said, "Okay." Before hanging up, she added one last sentence. "I hope I'm wrong about him." "So do I." The line went dead. I sat there for a long time watching the sun disappear over the water. There was still a small part of me that wished none of this had become necessary. Not because I regretted my decision, because I wished Marcus had never forced it. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. Back home, guests were getting dressed. Hair appointments, photographers, flowers arriving at the hotel. My attorney texted me first. Package delivered. A few minutes later, Rachel sent another message. "Marcus made sure your gift was placed with the others at the front of the ballroom." Then one more. "He's telling everyone it'll be the highlight of the reception." I locked my phone and slipped it into my pocket. Thousands of miles away, my brother's wedding was beginning. And somewhere inside that ballroom, a maple wood gift box was being carried to the front of the room for everyone to see. I never saw my brother open the box with my own eyes. Everything I know about those next 20 minutes came from 3 people: Rachel, my attorney, and later, Lauren herself. Rachel called first. I answered before the phone finished ringing. "You were right," she said quietly. They opened it. I walked onto the balcony of my hotel room, listening to the ocean while she described what was happening thousands of miles away. "Marcus was smiling," she said. "He actually thanked everyone for coming, then pointed at your gift. Apparently, he'd been telling guests all evening that his sister had finally decided to do the right thing. He even joked that I must have realized family mattered more than old arguments. People laughed. Someone carried the maple box to the center of the room. Marcus opened it himself. Rachel paused. The smile disappeared almost immediately. The first thing he saw wasn't a check. It was a sealed letter addressed to him. Underneath it sat neatly organized folders. Lauren leaned over to see what was inside. Marcus tried to close the lid. Too late. According to Rachel, Lauren reached into the box before he could move it away. She picked up the envelope with her name on it. "What is this?" she asked. Marcus reportedly answered, "It's probably another one of Olivia's dramatic stunts." But Lauren opened it anyway. Inside were copies of documents. Not originals. Copies. Business records, credit applications, examples of signatures, a formal notice from my attorney instructing that no relevant records be altered or destroyed because legal proceedings had begun. Rachel said the room became noticeably quieter. Lauren kept reading. Her father walked over. "So what's going on?" Marcus reached for the paperwork. "Nothing. She's twisting things." Lauren didn't hand it back. Instead, she opened another folder. This one contained a timeline, the unpaid loan for the fitness studio, business filings, the documents connected to my personal information. None of it accused Marcus of crimes. It simply laid out the facts, along with notice that the matter had been turned over to legal counsel for investigation. That was enough. Marcus started talking faster. "She's bitter. She's always hated seeing me happy. She's trying to ruin today." Rachel told me no one interrupted him. They just kept reading. Then Lauren unfolded my personal letter. I hadn't attacked Marcus. I hadn't insulted him. I had written only one paragraph. "I will not purchase my place in this family with money, lies, or humiliation. From this point forward, all communication regarding these matters must go through my attorney." That was it. Rachel said Lauren read it twice. Then she quietly folded the letter and placed it back inside the box. Marcus finally lost his composure. "She's manipulating all of you." Lauren looked at him. "Did you use Olivia's information?" He immediately shook his head. "No." "Then why are these documents here?" "They're being taken out of context." Her father asked another question. "Can you explain them?" Marcus didn't answer. He started blaming me again, then blamed lawyers, then blamed old business partners. Each explanation sounded different from the last. Rachel said you could actually feel the room changing. People stopped eating. Conversations died out. Even relatives from my side of the family looked confused. A few minutes later, my attorney called. "I wanted you to hear this directly from me," he said. "The legal notice was received?" "And?" "No one can claim they weren't informed." Before we hung up, another message appeared. This one wasn't from Rachel. It was from Lauren. Only 6 words. "I wish I'd known sooner." I stared at the screen for several seconds. Then Rachel texted again. Lauren just walked away from the head table. A moment later, another message followed. "The reception is still going, but Marcus's life is falling apart in front of everyone." A few weeks passed before everything finally started catching up with everyone. The wedding never became a marriage. Lauren officially filed to have everything canceled before they could move forward. From what my attorney told me, her family also cut all business ties with Marcus almost immediately. The position he'd been promised at her father's company disappeared overnight. The investigation into the financial documents continued. It wasn't dramatic like people imagine from movies. There weren't flashing lights or handcuffs, just letters, meetings, requests for records, deadlines, the kind of slow consequences that are impossible to argue away. Marcus tried moving money between accounts after receiving the legal notice. It didn't work. Too many people were already paying attention. One afternoon, my attorney called while I was sitting at a cafe overlooking the water. "I've got some good news," he said. "We recovered part of the money." I closed my eyes for a second. It wasn't all of it. It never could be. The nearly $92,000 I'd loaned him years ago wasn't suddenly coming back in full. But through the legal process, some assets were frozen, and I was able to recover a meaningful portion of what I'd lost. It wasn't really about the money anymore. It was proof that what happened to me actually mattered, that someone had finally looked at the facts instead of asking me to keep the peace. A few days later, I received another email. This one surprised me. It was from Lauren. There were no lawyers copied, no long explanation, just honesty. I don't know if there's a right way to say thank you. Reading those documents probably saved me from spending years married to someone I didn't really know. I'm sorry, I believed his version of you. I stared at the message for a while before replying. You don't owe me an apology. Take care of yourself. That was enough. We didn't become close friends. Sometimes closure is simply leaving a conversation without needing another one. Things with my parents were harder. Mom called a few weeks after everything became public. For the first time in years, she sounded tired instead of defensive. I miss talking to you. I miss talking to you too, I answered. There was a long pause. Then she quietly asked, Do you think someday things can be normal again? I looked out at the ocean before answering. I don't think they can go back to what they were. Another silence. But that doesn't mean we can't build something different. She didn't argue. She didn't defend Marcus. She simply whispered, I understand. Whether she truly did or not, I honestly don't know. Dad never apologized. He sent a short text once. Families shouldn't fight like this. I typed 3 different replies before deleting them all. Eventually, I sent only one sentence. Family also shouldn't ask one person to carry everyone else's choices. He never responded. Marcus contacted me exactly one time, not directly, through his attorney. The letter included an apology. It talked about stress, poor decisions, pressure, regret. What it didn't include was accountability. There was no acknowledgement of using my identity. No offer to repair the damage, no acceptance of the consequences. Just words hoping everything would somehow become easier. My attorney asked if I wanted to respond. I shook my head. No. Sometimes silence says everything that still needs to be said. I stayed in Phuket longer than I'd originally planned. Every morning became wonderfully ordinary. Coffee, walking along the beach, reading books I'd been too busy to open for years, calling Rachel just to laugh about something completely unrelated to my family. Life felt quieter, not perfect, just quieter. And I'd forgotten how valuable quiet could be. I used to believe love meant always saying yes, always fixing, always sacrificing. Now I think real love leaves room for honesty, boundaries, and respect. If someone asks you to trade your dignity just to keep their version of the family together, that's not peace. That's a transaction. If this story resonated with you, maybe the hardest word you've ever had to say was no. Sometimes that single word protects years of your future. I'd love to hear what you think, or if you've ever had to set a boundary with someone you loved. Share your thoughts in the comments, and if you enjoy stories about family, resilience, and difficult choices, don't forget to subscribe to Van's Rock Stories for more. Thanks for spending your time with me, and until the next story, take care of yourselves.